said.
Good thing. It's the worst places to be for Pesach. She's in Eretz Yisrael. I know she wants to be with her family, but it's good to be in Eretz Yisrael. All right, guys, we're live here. Let's
Rabbi,
yes,
can
go
I
ahead. Sorry?
Is it okay if I ask some quick questions about medications from last week? Because
Yes.
Pesach's coming up, and
Okay.
I'm concerned. Like I have some medications I take for like my cholesterol and some pain medications that I take. I mean, those. Am I allowed to take those from Pesach? I don't know, Pesach, I'm sorry, Pesach. Sorry, I'm dealing with here. She's barking. All right.
So again, I'm not going to just to answer. It all depends on exactly the reason of taking them, etc., and its severity. But if the best thing to do is there is a list that's out there that provides that goes over almost all the medicines, and if not, you could call up Rabbi Goldschmidt and ask him to check. There's
I can send it. I could send it to Barbara. The Star K, I believe, has a directory with all the medications.
Perfect. So send that, please, Rebecca.
But
Send it to Barbara.
I'll just say
Sure.
one thing. My rabbi said, if your doctor prescribed you take it every single day, continue to take it. Don't get sick over Passover.
Yeah. So I'm saying the question is, it depends on the situation and why you're taking the medicine, like on Shabbos. But again, there's a list, and there's also alternates that you could switch to for certain things for Pesach that are on the list. But thank you, Rebecca. If you could send Barbara the list. I know they come out with the list every year and try to cover as many products as possible, so you could have a clear understanding of excuse me, what is allowed and what is chametz and what's not chametz. Okay. So so Barbara was asking about the medicines. The reason is because, of course, we are learning the laws of Shabbos about how we deal with Shabbos in these situations. Again, if a person's in a severe situation, then obviously you take the medicine. If there's any question of your health, pekuach nefesh is docha everything. But the best is you know the medicines you're taking now, so it's not a last moment, and to check the list. So then if it's on the list, there's no questions. If it's not on the list, to call the rabbi before, go over with your rabbi your medications, and if they're not on the list, then he'll get back to you. But we have time. We have a few days to Pesach, a week almost to Pesach, so it's a good time to go over these things in general. Okay, so what we learned last week was that the rule of thumb is, and we went through the charts, etc., was that refuah to do if you're not in a severe situation, you're not bedridden. So refuah is anyone familiar with Samiria Rashidin? Oh, she jumped off. Okay, so
she's actually someone who I know. I just met
Okay.
her. Yeah. So,
all right, Ariel, if she comes back on, I'll let her on. Hopefully.
okay. Yeah, sure. Yeah, sorry, but
Okay, so we have so we're talking about that you can't. The concern is that you're going to crush the medicines, meaning making the medicines for Shabbos, and that's not allowed. Okay, so therefore, anything of refuah that's only for healing is forbidden on Shabbos, and therefore we're going to go to all the various situations now that could fall under this situation. Okay, so we're holding law number 4. Hachoishesh b'masnav v'chadayma. If you have abdominal pain and the like, v'chein mi sheyesh lechatotim b'roishai, or a rash, whatever that means, a rash or psoriasis, whatever. B'medinos elu, in these countries, means where we live now, based on the custom of how people behave nowadays, or where he wrote, at least in Europe, in Hungary, the Kitzur, that kivan she'ein noigin lasach b'shemen, we no longer have the custom. And once upon a time, people would rub oil on their body all the time, not just because you were sick. It wasn't a thing that you did when you were sick to rub oil, to oil yourself, so to say. Kiyim l'refuah, the only time it's being done is for healing, so it becomes an exclusive healing process. Therefore, asur lasach b'Shabbos, we're not talking about a severe situation, so you could possibly use oil to. I think the reason I mentioned psoriasis, I have psoriasis. I remember actually once someone saying that there's people that would use, I think, flax oil to put on psoriasis. So there's a concept of putting oil. I mean, of course, there's the creams that we have. I'm talking about a natural. So here it says Kim l'refuah, people only do it for healing. So therefore, asulach b'Shabbos. Again, it's not severe. We're talking about just putting on to ease the discomfort. So then it's forbidden to apply the oil on Shabbos. Because it's clear. Milsa the refuah kavod, you're doing it for healing because people don't do it for other reasons. Once upon a time, it was a normal thing for people to apply oil on a regular day, whether you were ill or not. Okay. It could have been a preventative or other reasons that they did it, but it was definitely, like, again, preventative is different than, like we said, we spoke last week, the whole geder about certain things that are done specifically because it's totally not, that you're not, it's not a healing process. It's certain things that are just regularly done. Okay. There's no footnotes on this. It's self-understood. Okay, this is something a bit interesting, not something that we would typically be aware of, but I guess it was something that people did maybe 200 years ago. Hagoineach mike'ev leiv, if you have, what you call it, engina, kind of, I think it seems like it's from what I checked, a kind of,
Angina, I
what is
believe.
it? Is it a severe?
It's like a heart attack.
Yeah.
Is it
I think
hard?
it's like a very, very severe, like a chest pain, angina. I think
Chest
it's
pain.
very,
Yeah, it's a chest. I don't think it's a heart attack. It's a heart attack. It's pekuch nefesh. I think it
Yeah,
seems
I
like,
think it's only a pain. It's not the, it's not the
yeah.
It's
actual.
just chest pain. It's like a tightening of the
Yeah.
chest when you feel it.
Tightening the chest. Okay.
Yeah,
So,
It's
so
like
again,
excruciating. Sometimes it can be very excruciating too. Yeah.
excruciating pain. Yeah, that's so. So evidently, one of the ways to ease the pain, like Ariel goodly, what rightly said is very painful, is mikaev lev shrufuase linoik befiv min aiz, to actually suckle on a goat, to take in the goat's milk directly from the goat. So that, I guess they figured, so I'm not sure who figured that one out, but they figured out that eases the pain. So are you allowed to do it on Shabbos? So he says, "Muter lo'ilinik b'Shabbos." You could do it on Shabbos. You could suckle on on from the goat directly on Shabbos. Why? Mishum denika have mifarik la'achiyad, mishum tsar dechayli la'gazra rabbanan. Because the problem of suckling or milking a cow or an animal on Shabbos is because it's mifarik. Mifarik, we're going to learn in a second, is the separation. So, but because this is not the regular way, obviously, it's not normal behavior, regular behavior. So therefore, it's the rabbis weren't, and it's in a situation you're in pain. So the rabbis are lenient in this situation. Again, and I never heard of people doing this today, but this was not even too many years ago. It's 200 years ago or so that Kitzur Shulchan Aruch wrote that people were doing, had this procedure or method of dealing with angina with the pain. Okay. So the footnotes is, again, mefarik is literally separating the name of the category of malachas which include milking. So you're not allowed to milk on Shabbos. That's why we don't milk cows on Shabbos. And I mean, you're not allowed to milk for the sake of the milk. You do it for tzar b'alachaim, for the pain. Sucking the milk directly from the goat is an unusual way of milking, to say the least, which is only the rabbanan prohibition in case of pain. The sages removed their prohibition. Okay. Nikuda, like they say in Hebrew. Move on. Okay, hachoshish b'meyav. So we said before about hachoshish b'masnav, which is abdominal pain, and now we're talking about hachoshish b'meyav, which is a stomach ache. Muter litin aleihem kais she'eru mimenu chamim. You could apply, and would be, this is a kind of pain that would be relieved by heat. So you want to put on. Are you allowed to use a hot compress or a heating pad on Shabbos? So he goes, you may place on your stomach a cup from which hot water was emptied, meaning so the cup is still retaining some heat. Alpha even though it still has the vapor, it still has the steam. Look before in Lamed Gimel Sufid Beis. You could also warm up some clothing and put them on your abdomen to relieve the pain. Just Barbara, what's the difference between, if I may ask, a stomach ache and an abdominal pain?
It's the same thing. because
seems
your stomach's in your abdomen, so
Yeah,
it,
that's what I was wondering because in law number 4 it talks about achoshish b'masnav that they would use oils for the pain of the abdominal pain, and here they're using heat for the stomach ache. So it
you
seems
can use both. We can do both.
Can
We've done
I
both.
can I interject? So I believe the stomach is a more like more specific, smaller area, and I believe the abdomen is like it's a larger area. It's like the upper area and also the lower area.
so it's more the general area. So that I mean, Tim, the point is obvious. It just I'm saying it seems like from the halacha. I'm not a doctor at all, but it seems from the halacha that the abdominal pain that used to be relieved through oil, and the stomach ache is like a hot water bottle or something.
And also another thing is that the stomach ache could be like when they say stomach, it could mean like digestive, that it's like a digestive issue. Whereas if it's the abdomen, it could be like, pain, pressure, like any of those other organs, that kind
Mm-hmm.
of thing.
Your lower body, your lower torso.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. All right. Thank you. Okay. So then it says, okay. So now it's number 10.
Wait, can I just say
Go ahead.
something
Sure.
about this? I have Crohn's, so there's a big difference. It could be from the lower all the way to the upper. In the pain wise, there's a difference between you just gassy and you really have like the Crohn's pain, which Crohn's is as a disease where your intestines bleed. But I got it under control. But the point is, when I had it before they got it under control, it's a pain. It's not like just gassy.
No, I hear that. So okay, so basically, um, uh, okay, so basically, you're saying that okay, either way, it's something that has to be relieved one way or another. So one way, I guess, the abdominal pain, he says people used to put on oil, where the stomach ache, they would put on a hot water bottle. Okay, let's see number 10. See chapter 33, paragraph 12, where the author rules that placing the cup while still containing the hot water is prohibited due to the danger of scalding. That you can't to do something on Shabbos that you may burn yourself, and that could cause. So you have to make sure to not put the water in. Now, what about a hot water bottle? Is allowed if there's real need. So the Mishnah Brewer Paskins, you could do a hot water bottle, which I assume would be the hot water, those hot water,
The red bottle,
the red bottle,
boil
yeah,
water like you do for
yeah,
tea. So if you have a continuous boiling pot that has the Shabbos mode, so you pump it manually, you can
yeah.
pump it into the same way you do tea.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be careful not to burn yourself, but he says it's allowed. The hot water bottle is allowed, even though the liquid is inside. The Mishnah Brewer says because it's sealed on Shabbos. Okay, I think that we have to check on that a little bit more about to make sure. It seems like from the law of 33, that one has to make sure because sometimes you have to be careful not to.
Last time I checked on
Yeah.
use the water bottle, it's rubber. They're usually made in the color
No,
of
but still,
red.
but still, you could burn yourself if it's not.
You could burn yourself with anything that's hot.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Let's see the next law. Okay, so mi shenig fa yada eragloi. Okay, this is if you injured your hand or your foot. Again, so they had a remedy that they would tzaim sabiyayin. You may soak it in wine. Again, you want to know if this is just something for refuah. K'dei lahamid adam, to stop the bleeding. Avalei b'chaymetz, you can't put it in vinegar. Because the wine, it seems like, was something that people would soak in wine on a good day, and with the vinegar, the issue is because it's only done for refuah, then it's a refuah only, and therefore you can't do it on Shabbos. Again, this is a case where we're not talking about the concern of it getting worse, but just to relieve the pain as it is. If you're a delicate person that would never soak yourself in wine, therefore the wine is only for healing for you, and therefore you're not allowed to do it. It'd be like vinegar. Agav hayad, a gav regel. What about if it's the back of the hand, the back of the foot? If you got a cut through metal, so then right away there the law is different. Then because it's more severe, you're allowed to heal any what way possible. Okay, let's see the footnotes on this. You may soak your foot, 11. literally contract or shrink. In other words, the wine has been has a contracting effect, which aids in halting the bleeding. So according to, I'm not sure if it if it if it if it's all wines, but it's the footnote 11 says that wine has something within it that will stop bleeding. So it's good to know, I guess, for stam. But you could do it on Shabbos because it's not really 100% that would be for refuah. Whereas if you're a delicate person, you shouldn't do it on Shabbos because it's clear you're doing for refuah. Okay, and this is a situation where it could be left alone, but we're talking about convenience or if you're irritated by it. Okay, 12. You can't put it in whiskey or vinegar. So the Mishnah Berurah adds whiskey to the list. Let's continue. Because he says over here about the metal for the significance of the wound, therefore, because it falls into, we're going to see next chapter 92 or 91, where it discusses the more severe sicknesses or concern of something more severe, where we're talking about this chapter is about it's not severe and it's not dangerous to turn into severe. It's talking about inconvenient or painful. And just for that, you're not allowed to do refuah on Shabbos. 92 already deals with a situation where you're bedridden or like bedridden, and so the pain in the back of the hand, the back of the foot, or cut by metal, which could turn into infection, etc. So that has other rules, and you have other. We'll get to that next chapter where how you deal with it. Okay. Yesh loy eza michosh be'einav. Again, you have, it says in English, a slight pain in the eye. So they had a way of dealing with it was roik tofel, which is roik tofel means is used in other things in halacha, which is spit, like early morning spit, which is still it's kind of gathered in your mouth over the night, which has in it, I guess, certain things that are effective for different various things in halacha. It's used in the laws of nida, and it's also used. Evidently, people would apply it on their eye to deal with eye pain. Now, again, we're talking about not severe situation. Eyes, something that's very sensitive. If something, God forbid, happens to your eye, that we're not talking about just a pink eye. We're talking about it, or just a sticky eye. But if something is severe, obviously, immediately give it its full medical attention. Here we're talking about I would call it, like it says, slight pain in the eye, which would probably be something like a pink eye or a dry eye. So you just want to relieve the discomfort and you want to put the spit. So you're not allowed to do it on Shabbos. Meaning the spit of your mouth in the morning before you've tasted anything. Because that's clearly something that's for healing. But again, if you can't open your eyes and it's getting severe, so then you can moisten it with this kind of early morning spit. It's not for refuah. You need to open your eyes. That's not called healing. Again, there's certain parts of there's certain things that are kind of on the line of that could go from being just casual to severe. So, and eyes, of course, are one of them. We don't play games with our eyes, God forbid. But everyone knows if you have just a pink eye, so that would obviously apply to also applying creams. That if it's just a question of discomfort, it's not allowed on Shabbos. And creams, of course, have other issues like we've discussed before of mimareach, of smearing. Okay. So he says over here for severe pain or infection, you may use eye drops or ointments. Okay, so clearly he says the Shulchan Aruch says that if it's a severe pain in the eye, or if there's an infection, so you could use the eye drops on Shabbos or ointments to deal with the pain. Okay. What about indigestion? You ate too much, so a person, again, this is not going into the health issues of throwing up, but for whatever reason you need to throw up, so you're allowed to do it on Shabbos. You could stick your finger down your throat to cause yourself to throw up. Obviously, if you're throwing up naturally, nothing you could do about it. But can you cause yourself to throw up? Now, again, this is not to be taken as if we're dealing with something more that's a severe situation where a person's doing it constantly. That's something else. That's another situation. I'm talking about just a person who's just out of the ordinary, feeling uncomfortable, and it's not something you're doing constantly. So we're talking about just on the refuah, on the isolated situation. So it's okay to do it on Shabbos. This is not giving anyone a green light to throw up after you eat. Okay. Maka she'ein boy sakana. What about, okay, this happens all the time, right? You have children running around or what have you, and you get a wound which is not critical. Again, when in doubt, don't be machmir, right? Oh, it's not so bad, etc. Here's maka she'ein boy sakana. You have a wound it's not critical. Lo yaniach aleh ritia. You cannot put on it a bandage. Afila asami esmal, even if you have the bandage prepared from yesterday. It means you're not okay. We're talking about those days where they didn't have. It's not like today. You just go to the pharmacy and buy band-aids that are ready to be used. Here we're talking about you have to make the band-aid, a bandage with the dressing. So here's the ritia also has with dressing. So even if it's prepared the day before, like kol davar shum mishum refuah. Afilu ola im chaticha beged yavesh v'yashen shunrapa gamken. He says like this. It's even if it's prepared from the day before, nor may you apply anything that acts as a remedy, even a leaf. It's not your typical thing, or old dry rag, since it serves as a remedy. It's not allowed on Shabbos. But you could apply something to prevent it from scratching or to be irritated. So here we're talking about you're trying to cure it through the dressing. So the retia is actually not just preventing it from getting infected, but you're actually trying to treat it. That's not allowed on Shabbos, again, if it's not critical. But to apply just your band-aid so it shouldn't get infected or shouldn't itch, etc., that's allowed. Let's say you already had a bandage the day before. It's part of an ongoing process with an ointment. So what if you take it totally off? You shouldn't take it totally off and put it back on. Then he says megalik tsasa. You could kind of reopen up a little bit the bandage. Umekanech piyamaka, cleaning out the wound. V'chayzer megalik tsasa shni, and then kind of the other side. Umekanchan, to clean it. But you cannot clean and change the actual bandage which is used for dressing. Because then it's the problem of smearing, which is not allowed on Shabbos. What happens if nafla ritim al gabe amak al gabe karka? If the bandage with dressing falls off the thank you, Rebecca. I see you posted on the chat the link for the Star K list. Thank you very much. I need it myself. So therefore he says like this: if it falls on the floor, you can't put it back on. But nafla gabi kli, if it didn't fall on the floor, it just fell on something else, then you could put the bandage back on. The image star harbor. This is talking about, again, it's not critical, but if you're in tremendous pain, then you could ask a non-Jew to put it back on. Aval. He says, you're not allowed to ask a Gentile to make you this bandage, this dressing on the Shabbos itself. Why? Because smearing a dressing is biblical. So therefore, you're not allowed to ask a non-Jew to do something biblical unless your whole body is ill, which is, again, if the situation is more severe. Okay. Let's see the footnotes on this. Mimarech is spreading or smoothing whatever may be on the bandage is forbidden. Malacha. You're not allowed to smear creams or Vaselines, etc. 15, lest you are marech, see above footnote. 16, or the possibility exists that you might become so ill. Again, this is where the thing, if this is going to lead to something, if not being attended to, it's going to lead to something more severe, obviously it's a different situation. We're talking about a strong discomfort that there is no concern that this is going to spring into something more severe. Just to get you relief and to put on a ointment with a bandage, that's not allowed on Shabbos. Okay. Aser leniach beged amakish yetzimenu dam. This is I think we spoke about this before. Could you take if you cut yourself? So you take a white napkin. So can you wrap it around your finger on Shabbos? So again, we're not talking about a situation where there's a concern for infection. So here, then you cannot do it because Shadam Yisavaisa, it's going to paint it. So you're coloring the bandage or the clothing. Umikoshke Beged Adam, surely here the Kitzur says even if it's red, you're saying you're not coloring it, it's already red. Shumasakni, you're making it more red, you're fixing it, making it better quality. I mean, obviously it's blood, but whatever. And he says it's also forbidden to squeeze the wound in order to extract blood. That's for sure not allowed. And the Kehilchatah said, what do you do if you cut yourself on Shabbos? So like we said before, you can put it into water or into wine if you're not a particular person. Then you could put on it a cloth. But to put on it a beged that's going to... What's the difference between a smartut? Smartut, by the way, just for info, is still used today for a shmata, we call it in Yiddish. Shmata means... A smartut is like a piece of clothing that's used as a
Rag.
Sorry?
A rag.
A rag, thank you. Like a rag. So the difference between a beged and a smartut is a beged is a clothing, means it's something that you would possibly wear again. So then you're kind of fixing your clothing or painting your clothing or dyeing your clothing by putting on blood. But a rag is meant by definition, you're not using it. So then to tie a rag around means basically something that's not going to be used again for something of clothing. So then you're allowed to wrap it around your finger after you wash it in water or wine. What happens if it doesn't stop bleeding? And you wash it doesn't help. So it says you could apply a spider web, which we're going to see evidently helps again with cuts, and wrap around a rag around the spider web. There's some people who are not so clear about this because they feel that the spider web doesn't just stop the bleeding, but also heals, and you're not allowed to hear on Shabbos. And Yehudi, better to have a non-Jew apply the spider web. Okay, these are not things that I've heard people do nowadays. Okay, but let's see the footnotes. Because the blood dyes the cloth. Magen Avram 3:20-24. The poskim are in disagreement because it is of questionable benefit for the clothing. That's an obvious question. I wouldn't say that I'm upgrading my white shirt or even my undershirt if I get blood in it. That's not something that I would do regularly, right? It's not considered dyeing my clothing. So there's a discussion by the poskim, by the halachic authorities, because it's a questionable benefit for a cloth to be dyed in this manner. The Mishnah Brura, the Chafetz Chaim, therefore rules that when the need is great, this is permitted. So it means you don't have to find a rag specifically. You could take a piece of clothing because this is not really considered dyeing. Okay. Number 18. According to some, it is the malacha the eraisa of chovel causing a wound. To squeeze blood out of a wound on Shabbos is biblical, according to some poskim. The Magen Avram, others say it's only the Rabbanan. The Chai Adam, I guess, agrees with the Magen Avram. Okay, that's only rabbinic, but it doesn't make it that you could do it. But the question is if it's midaraisa or not. A spider web. Let's see what this is all about. Though a spider web is muktzah, right? We talked about in the earlier chapters about what is muktzah, what could be handled on Shabbos. Obviously, you had no plans on using a spider web beforehand. Nevertheless, it may be handled for the benefit of one who is ill, even though this is not severe. So says the Mor Uktsa and the Yeshuas Yaakov, Kehilchatah Shabbos. Others, however, disagree and prohibit handling muktzah for this purpose. So says the Chai Adam. Therefore, the Mishnah Berurah rules that for the benefit of an ill person, muktzah should be handled with a shinoi, in other words, a manner that is unusual. Okay, so this is not just a question of the spider web, but anything that is muktzah that you want to use to help you in dealing with a situation. So if you have a lot of pain, so do it in a shinoi. A shinoi means not a regular way of handling it. And the reason why we do Shinoi on Shabbos is that it gives us clarity to know that that this is a unique situation, and also doesn't teach others that this is a permissible way of handling something that's considered muksa. So the idea of Shinoi, we use many times in Shabbos in a situation when something is allowed. It's allowed with a Shinoi because it's not the regular way of doing it or handling it, whether it's moving something klach or yad, or other ways of atypical ways of handling something. Okay. We're going to go through these case by case. If you want one who punctures, a morsa would be a zit or something like that, to open it up, as the doctors sometimes do to relieve the pus. They want to do this is a way of healing it. You're not allowed to do it on Shabbos. It's prohibited to do it on Shabbos. Because this is actually what a doctor would do. So it's an actual violation. Okay. If you're not doing it to heal the actual wound or the actual situation, but to actually just get out the trapped fluid, or the pus, it's not so important for you. You don't care if it closes up. You just want to get out the pus right now. You're allowed because it causes tremendous pain. Use a needle to puncture it, to get out the pus, but not your nails. Because if you're going to use your nails, you may peel off some of the skin, and that's not allowed on Shabbos. Whereas if you just puncture with a needle, it's much sharper, etc. Now, sterilizing a needle for this purpose on Shabbos is obviously not allowed, to put it on fire and all that. But here we're talking about if you have a sterile needle ready. And then you would have a chiyuv, you would have a violation of Shabbos if you peeled off the skin. And also to use a needle is a little problematic, because maybe you're just trying to keep it open so it should heal. So therefore, if you just want to take out the fluids, the pus, better to have it being done by a Gentile. Okay. So basically, if you're in severe pain and you want to puncture to get out the pus, use a needle. Don't use your fingernails, and better to have it being done by someone, a Gentile, than yourself. But let's see the footnotes, which obviously can give us more information. This is allowed. This allows how do you pronounce this? The abscesses to drain, and the wound to be exposed to the ear, which quickens the healing.
Epsis, I think it's epsis,
Yeah.
or maybe
Abscess. Okay. So then,
or maybe epsis is in plural. Could be, maybe.
So they basically, by opening it, helps heal it. So therefore it's healing on Shabbos, not allowed, but to get rid of the pain, which is to relieve, to get out of to drain the pus, is allowed. 21 is if it's that's not allowed. To enlarge the wound is not allowed, because it's a malach of refuah. So he says over here he's guilty of Shabbos violation. Why? He is liable of the malacha. Which malacha is he violating? It's called makah b'patish, which means the hammer blow. What's the hammer blow? Makah b'patish is a description on Shabbos that what's the hammer blow? The hammer blow means that final blow. When you're making something, a builder has that last knocking the nail in. That's that final act that completes a process of building or fixing, what have you. So makah b'patish, that last act that makes something from being the process to completing the process, is one of the violations of Shabbos. So this is considered makah b'patish by opening the wound for healing. Why? In other words, the final act of craftsmanship work. Since this requires a degree of skill, so therefore this is a skill to know how to open the wound properly for healing, and that's the last thing you have to do for healing. So it's the last hammer blow for the healing process, and that's not allowed on Shabbos. And he says the proof is that you need a skill for this. Others hold he's him liable of the malach of baina, not makah b'patish, but building. The creation of an opening is somewhat akin to building. So says Rashi. So the question of opening a wound is makabeh patish or boina. Makabeh patish would be the final act for the process of the healing, or to make the person complete, or building that the person's that there was making an opening, which is like building in the wound. Okay. These are all things that are discussed, obviously, in the Tractate of Shabbos. Number 22 is permitted to, you don't care if it opens up immediately. The only reason why you are doing this is to relieve the pain. It's not to heal it. It's not the same thing of the same idea of healing and relieving pain. This requires some clarification. Okay, so he wants to explain footnote. The melacha of this paragraph, be it makabeh patish or boina, whatever the issue is that we're concerned you're doing, whether it's the final blow of the hammer or building, requires that the wound be opened and remain open. That's the process of what's being done here. You're leaving the wound open to heal. When the opening is not made for its own sake, but only temporary to drain the wound, and it is not it's not a malacha for its own sake, malacha shein tzricha legufa, means even though it could be by puncturing the wound, puncturing this trapment of fluid is going to heal it, but that's not. It's a malacha shein tzricha legufa. That's not what your intention is. You don't need it to heal right now. You'll deal with it after Shabbos. Right now, you just want to relieve the pain that is caused by the trapped pus or ear, whatever, what have you. So therefore, it's not a malacha for its own sake. That's a rule in Shabbos. Malacha shein tzricha legufa. You're doing something, but you're not doing it for the sake of what's being done. It's happening because that's how it happens, matter of fact. But that's not your intention. In other words, malacha shein tzricha legufa, which is according to all poskim, except the Rambam, is only dirabanan, is only you're not allowed to do, but it's only rabbinic. It's not biblical. And where pain is involved, such act is permitted. So by puncturing the wart, so to say, the zit, it could be you're going to heal it. But at the same time, that's not your intention. Your intention is to relieve yourself from the pain. The Rambam rules, however, Maimonides, that malacha shein tzricha gufa is deraisa. It's still biblical, even if what you're doing is 100% a act of healing, even if that's not your intention. Your intention is to relieve the pain. Nevertheless, he allows the temporary opening of a wound because, in his opinion, this cannot be construed as a malacha in any manner whatsoever. So the Rambam says in Shar Hatziyah, he says that I guess explains the Rambam that in this case, this is not considered even a malacha because he says it's not going to heal. You're just going to puncture it with a needle, and therefore it's allowed in this situation. But he disagrees with in another case where you would be doing an absolute malacha, just that you don't. That's not your intention. That's Aaron. You're on mute.
Yeah. Okay. So on Shabbos, one of the things you mentioned was we're supposed to take a little time out to study. And if you're in pain, how can you study? So why would they even not let you do something if you're in pain, no matter how much pain?
Okay, you have to understand. There's a system here. A lot of this argument that you're saying is, I'm going to address it because it's important. Where people use this argument for other Shabbos violations. I'm going to drive on Shabbos or do other things on Shabbos because I need to have the Shabbos experience. You have to understand that it says you have things that you have to do on Shabbos, you have to gather, you have to do all the things, but you're not allowed to do it in a way that's violating the Shabbos. I mean, according to the law, if you want to know, we're learning the laws of Shabbos. You can't use the benefits of Shabbos to override the laws of Shabbos. So if there would be you can't just say that's the reason we're permitting it is to give you Oneg Shabbos. We do consider it in a lot of cases where we say this is Oneg Shabbos, therefore you do it on Shabbos. This is being Simcha on Yom Tov, therefore you're allowed to do it on Yom Tov. We want to maximize the experience of the holidays and Shabbos. But not if it's a straight up violation, and we're not going to permit a violation to bring Oneg, to bring joy or Simcha or the experience of learning on Shabbos, etc. So if we have a way to find it halachically to permit it, then part of our intention is to give you an enjoyable experience of Shabbos. But to straight up override a violation because that's going to give you a better experience is not allowed on Shabbos. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I just find it hard, like if you're in pain.
No. So that's what you're saying. You're saying the issue is the pain, and therefore he says and we don't want you to be you don't have to be in pain. So therefore, if you're doing it in a way that's not deraisa, right, to just puncture it with a needle, but to heal it is not important right now. You don't have to heal it. You're not allowed to heal on Shabbos. So to get rid of the pus is allowed, but it's because of the pain, not because we have to be careful not to fall into the idea which sometimes is being used. Again, I'm not talking as to individuals specifically or in individual cases specifically. We're learning the laws of Shabbos. We have to know the rules. The law is the law. So we have to know that if the law says that this is permissible for X, Y, and Z reason. Right now in Rambam, we're learning the laws of holidays. In holidays, because of what's holidays coming up, Pesach's coming up, so there's a lot more permitted in the holiday than in Shabbos, right? We could cook on the holidays. We could use a pre-existing fire on the holidays. So therefore, in Yom Tov, because there's more permitted, therefore there has to be more boundaries, because a person may stretch the law and then say, oh, if I'm allowed to cook on Shabbos, maybe I'm allowed to start a fire on Shabbos. Starting a fire is not allowed. You have to use a pre-existing fire. But the Torah, as much as possible, is going to want to permit things, and we find that the Torah permits a lot of things to enhance that a person should have simcha on Yom Tov, but up to a point. And the same thing when it comes to discomfort or the experience of Shabbos, up to a point. So when the Torah says, yes, it's because we have a halachic source to be lenient, and that would help in the experience of Shabbos, and if the halacha said so, then you're allowed. But to come up to your own conclusion, that's something you have to be careful, be guarded by. Okay.
Thank you.
Number 23. Squeezing the wound is not permitted lest you cause bleeding. However, the blood already accumulated in the absence may be cleaned out, which is why you're allowed to release the pus that's been built up, but not to squeeze it to cause it to. So again, you have to be careful on Shabbos not to do that. Some people forget about it, especially when you're teenagers, etc. What are we talking about over here? Okay, the question is that you should use a needle and not your fingernails. The others, the Taz and the Magen Avram, disagree and prefer using fingernails to a needle in order to avoid usual method of puncturing. So that's what I was thinking. The needle is your go-to tool, right? If you have a choice to use a needle and make a clean insert and take out the pus, you would use that better than your nail, which is going to make a mess of it all, right? So the Taz and the Magen Avram say the opposite. Better use your nail because it's not your nails, because it's not your typical way of doing it. In order to avoid the usual method of puncturing a wound, provided care is taken not to tear any of the skin. Okay, so there's difference of agreement of difference in an opinion of what's better to use, a nail or a needle. Again, I don't think that there's any ability for a person to sterilize a needle for this purpose. So therefore, you would have to either use a pre-sterile or an unsterile needle, or use your fingernails, because would rely on the Magen Avram and the Taz. Okay. Let's see law number 13. If you have an incision in your arm called an aptora, fistula, okay. So he says, if it closed up, you want it to heal, so you can't, it starts closing up on Shabbos, you can't stick in a lentil to keep it open. You clearly want to keep it open. But if you have a dressing that was prepared from yesterday, you could put it on this opening in your arm, it's keeping it, that should not get infected. Or keep it as is. But if the dressing is going to cause the blood to come out, it's also forbidden. We'll see the footnotes on this. If by cleaning, okay, again, you have to remember something. When we said before, when you have liquid that's already trapped in a wort or what have you, and you're just releasing it, it's different than squeezing and causing blood to come out. So if you want to clean it, it's going to cause liquids or fluids or blood to come out. Also, not allowed to clean it out on Shabbos. He says, why is it different than the mursa, than the zit? The hasam and mursa over there, it's sitting there. You're just releasing it. You're not causing a wound through like when you do when you squeeze it. But when when the blood and the fluids is inside the wound, so to say, and you're squeezing it, causing it to be worse, you're making a wound, and you're not allowed to create a wound on Shabbos. Okay. Let's see footnotes number 26. And we'll do one more law, and we're going to stop open to questions and continue next week. Okay. 27 is what are we talking about over here? You may not insert a legume for the purpose of reopening it, because you may because your intention is that it remain open, which is a curative effect. Again, it's a refuah, so that's a problem. 28 is Shulchan Aruch Harav. This allows applying any dressing. The Alter Rebbe says you cannot dress a wound on Shabbos. Again, not talking about a situation that could cause infection or severe situation. 29 is the Magen Avram. Okay, let's do one more. Okay, a wound that's already healing. So then you could apply dressing that was prepared from yesterday. It's only protecting it. And to remove the crust around the wound is also allowed. Let's see, 30. So says the Shulchan Aruch. Okay, let's just do one more. What about a splinter? Right, this happens all the time. You have kids playing in the park on Shabbos. So if you get a splinter on Shabbos, you can remove it with a needle. You can't be careful not to cause it to bleed, because then you're causing a wound. You're creating a wound on Shabbos. If you cannot avoid causing it to bleed and are in pain, you may go ahead and remove it. So says the Mishnah Brura. Okay, let's stop here, because the next chapter going further just adds to a little bit more severe situations. We'll pick that up next week. Any questions? Yes, Rebecca.
So what about Yom Tov? Do all these halachas apply on Yom Tov? Or
Yes.
no?
Yes, anything that's Asr on Shabbos is Asr on Yom Tov besides for Eichel Nefesh.
But I mean, isn't it like, I don't know, like, I know you're allowed to use hot water for certain things that you can on Shabbos. Like, aren't certain things allowed on Yom Tov that are not allowed on Shabbos?
It's
Like for
if it's something that's connected to food, Eichel Nefesh is allowed. But here we're talking about refuah.
mm-hmm.
It's a little different.
Aren't there other things that you can do on Yom Tov that you can't do on Shabbos?
Yeah, yes, because we once we expand a little bit, obviously the boundaries, like for instance carrying that's not 100% food related, and other things that enhance the Simchas Yom Tov. But fundamentally, whatever is forbidden on Shabbos and is forbidden on Yom Tov, and even Yom Tov things are forbidden. Even things that are Ochel Nefesh, it's forbidden if you could have
For
done
the
it.
next day.
No, or if you could have done it at Yom Tov. Like you can't, like things that you could have done yesterday. The Torah doesn't allow you to do it today just because it's Yom Tov, because it's going to actually affect your Simchas Yom Tov. You're wasting time on the Yom Tov on doing things you could have prepared. Anything that needs to be fresh, that's why cooking's allowed. For some reason, today we have this whole everyone's excited about aged meats, but either for whatever reason, the halacha understood that fresh slaughtered meat is better than even meat slaughtered yesterday. Again, you have to remember the refrigeration that they had today is different than they had before. So therefore, you're allowed to slaughter on Yom Tov, because it's better to have the meat fresh. But certain things that you could have done the day before are not allowed on Yom Tov. And
But isn't carrying? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Carrying is allowed because you're allowed to carry for food. But to deal with medicine issues, that's nothing to do with food.
But can't you carry like anything, like a talus?
Yeah. Again, some people are
Carry
makbid,
anything, right?
because once it was carrying was allowed, is allowed. But this doesn't apply to medicines. I mean, you
Okay.
can carry medicine in your pocket. That's allowed. But to make medicine on Yom Tov, or do the things that for food on Yom Tov, Yom Tov has this. I'll double check it, but I'm almost sure that's the case.
Okay.
Aaron?
What about, okay, so all the things you talked about today, what about for a young person who doesn't understand, a baby and an adult child, or an adult who, like your daughter, who doesn't understand, can you do things that otherwise you might not be able to do?
Yes, yes, but you can do it case by case. For instance, I'll give you an example. When it comes to our daughter, I have asked many halacha questions that we wouldn't be able to do on Shabbos. For instance, I'll give you an example. If we would leave out the candles on Friday night, even whatever was left over after the burnout, and she wakes up very early, she could eat it, and she would. It's not just a far out concern. It's something that she would do. So I had to ask Aninala. I said, this is really questionable to use the things that, I mean, malach of burning on Shabbos candles is really forbidden. But it was dangerous for her to be eating it. So we asked the halacha question, and we got a psak that with the shino and all that, we can make sure to empty it out after it totally burns out. So she shouldn't eat it on Shabbos morning.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. Anything else? All right. See you guys. Matzah Shabbos. We're going to have our last class in Hilchas Tefillah, and we'll have to figure out how we're going to go forward because Matzah Shabbos is getting later after Pesach. Take care, everyone. Laila Tov.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.